Okay, good morning, guys. My name is Erica Martin. I am the Director of Training here at Get More Math. And I am here today to talk to you about delivering spiral review for long-term retention. I'm not just the Director of Training, I also was a classroom teacher for 14 years. And the last 2 years, I was lucky enough to use Get More Math in my classroom. So I'm going to sort of speak to you directly, not just from a trainer perspective, but from the perspective of a teacher that used it. Now, I want to make sure that everybody knows how to enter a question. In case you're having any kind of troubles, I can see them already popping in, so you folks must know how to do that. Any questions that you may have, go ahead and type those in. We've got Robbie Brown on the line with us today, so he will be able to answer your questions even as I'm giving the presentation. And then oftentimes he'll sort of chime in and let me know if there's anything that I need to speak to directly as we're going. So you can see we have lots more people joining even right now. So welcome, guys. Thanks so much for coming. Let's go ahead and review our agenda. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about my story. We're going to talk about the story of Josh Britton. He's the man that created this program. And funny enough, his story was a lot like my story, which I think will be a lot like your story, because if there's one thing we know, it's that there's one common problem for almost all math teachers. Our kids forget the material we teach them. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how mixed review every day was sort of the key to the solution of that problem. We're going to talk about a classroom pattern, a little bit of a demonstration on how I used Get More Math specifically with my kids from the start of the class and then to the end of the class with, some teaching in between. We're going to talk about a deeper dive into the student experience. What's it look like for the student within the Get More Math app, sort of in all of those pieces? We're going to talk about exams, which I know many of you, you may have joined this webinar simply for that piece. You're really anxious. Your students are coming to you, and I'll tell you what, we don't know what our kids know at this point, and we need some data on that. Where are these gaps? So maybe I'm saving the best for last. We're going to talk about the exams and all the many features that go along with that and how we can use it to not just assess our kids over the course of the school year, but also in the beginning of the year. And then I'm going to finish up with the training options that we have and the free trial offer. It's for an entire school year for any school that has never used Get More Math before. So let's go ahead and get started with my story. I'm wondering how many of you can relate to this typical day. If you were to imagine a typical math class, and I know you're probably thinking, Erica, there is no typical day anymore, and I know that. But let's just talk about the underlying problem first. As a math teacher, we spend a good portion of our day teaching the lesson, right? We're teaching them some new skill. Then we're going to provide some sort of practice. Probably start with guided practice, give them some independent practice on those skills that we taught. That's a typical math day. Then we take that day and we put it together with several days that look just like that, some sort of consistent topic, and we call that a unit or a chapter. What do we do at the end of that unit? Well, we have to give them some sort of test. We need to know, did they learn the material? What does every math teacher do before the test? We review. And then what does every math teacher do after the test? Well, we grade those tests. Maybe we notice that there were several concepts that seems a lot of students miss. So we might review those concepts. We want our students to learn from their mistakes because we know that after this unit, we have to move on to the next unit. So we repeat that same process for Unit 2 and Unit 3 and Unit 4, and we continue to do this throughout the year. Knowing that at the end of the year, for many of us, we have some sort of big test. We're going to assess our students to make sure that they know all the material we taught all year. Now, it's a big test, that's lots of material. Maybe we give our kids a few days of review, but they should be fine because we did a great job all year. We saw our kids doing the math, they passed the test, they should be great. Doesn't work. Didn't work for me. I don't know if it works for you. I can tell you it didn't work for Josh Britton. At the end of his first year, he was shocked when he gave the final exam and nearly all his students failed. And he thought, wait a second, what is really going on here? If I'm teaching this unit and they're passing this test and they pass all the other tests, why are they failing at the end of the year? What he figured out is he wasn't actually reviewing, or rather his kids weren't reviewing for the test. They were cramming. They were thinking, okay, what do I need to know? I need to know just enough so I can pass that test so that when that test is over, whew, I can have a sigh of relief. I can move on. Josh likes to call it the flush because guess what? We know that after Unit 1, we have to move on to what? Unit 2. So how many of you can relate to your kids that they finish one chapter, maybe they don't like that chapter, and they are ready to move on and forget about that material so that they can move on to the next chapter? Maybe they're not, maybe they're trying to remember, but what happens over time as you're moving on? Is that material fresh and crisp in their head? No, we know that it's getting fuzzy. Sometimes it's not even just fuzzy, sometimes it seems to disappear. I can tell you that as a high school teacher, I would get to that end of the year. I would think, oh, I need a few days to review. The few days of review turned into me scrambling. I felt like I needed to reteach from scratch a, a massive portion of my curriculum. I would bring up a concept and my students would say, Mrs. Martin, you never taught me that. I most certainly did teach you that. And then that's when you just feel so defeated because what you're doing isn't working. This is how Josh felt after his first year. And he thought, okay, if I want something to change, I need to change something. So I'm going to look at my typical day. And he realized that this idea of teaching new material and practicing new material was great for the short term, but was not great in the long term. In order for his students to truly build long-term retention, he knew that he needed to prioritize and designate a portion of his day to mixed review. And so he thought about it in terms of a pie chart. He thought, okay, well, I still need to provide the lesson, and I still need them to practice the material that I just taught them, but I also need them to practice the old material because otherwise they're forgetting it. That's the mixed review. So he started to really focus on that mixed review, and he thought, okay, in order to really build long-term retention, what would that mixed review look like? Well, it would need to be cumulative, completely cumulative. You know, if you're in chapter 6, you're going to need to not just review chapter 5, but 4 and 3 and 2 and 1, and you're going to have to constantly be reaching back. Okay, maybe I can make a worksheet like that. Well, you know what? As you move on throughout the year and the material gets larger and larger and larger, it really should be individualized for every student, because you know as well as I do that one student might need to review material from chapter 4 while his neighbor needs to review material from chapter 3. So for this to truly be effective, it needs to both be cumulative and individualized for every one of his students. Well, I can tell you Josh Britton's a pretty smart guy, but even he realized he could not do that for all of his students on a regular basis. So he built a program to do it for him. He built Get More Math. And that's exactly what Get More Math will do for your students. It will provide a mixed review that reaches back through all of the material you've taught so far this year, individualized for each one of their kids, your kids, based on their needs. It also will provide that practice piece. Remember, you're still teaching. They still need to practice that new material. So we sort of have two different practice modes in Get More Math. One to provide that focus practice, and the other to provide the mixed review. Now, I'm going to tell you something we don't provide. We did this intentionally. Remember, Josh built this in the classroom while he was a classroom teacher, and he felt strongly that the best person to actually deliver the instruction was him. And then when he decided to share this with all the teachers in the world, he thought, you know what, they're also the best people to deliver the instruction. So there is no instructional component to Get More Math. We simply are providing focused practice on that new material and an individualized practice on the old. You drive the lesson. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like in the course of a year. So now you've still got these units. You're still working daily. You can see the blue lesson, the purple practice, the green mixed review. But imagine if your students were reviewing this often, do you really think you're going to see the fade or the disappearing act that we saw before? I can tell you firsthand that you do not. I use this in my classroom. And the reason that I became such an advocate for it was the first time I saw something work. I saw students solving systems of equations 2 weeks after I taught it. My mind was blown. I was a believer, and I think you will be too. Now, that's my story. You may not connect with the solution yet, but I'm sure that many of you connect with the problem. And I bet most of you think, yeah, mixed review every day sounds great. I just couldn't build it. That's too hard to do. Well, guess what? That's what we're here for. So let's take a look at this class demonstration. Now, I want you to think about, again, blue is the lesson, purple is that practice set, green is the mixed review. I actually started my students in mixed review every day. I had to have something called a bell ringer. And so my students would come in, they knew immediately to log in, they would be in the mixed review environment, cycling back, getting what they needed. This was a great time for me to take attendance and do what I needed to do. And then our students would go and they would move into the lesson portion of the day. Now, we were not working in Get More Math at this time. This looked different from lesson to lesson, small groups, direct instruction, what have you. We would then have some sort of guided practice together. We'd be practicing the problems. And inevitably, I would always find that certain students were ready for independent practice before maybe some of their peers. And so the cool part was with Get More Math, I could do that. I would sort of gradually release my students into independent practice when I felt they were ready. So you can see here that maybe 3 or 4 of my students would go ahead and log in to Get More Math. They would be doing that practice on whatever it was I just taught, and I was able to stay with the rest of the class and continue to do guided practice. Over time, more students would show me they're ready, and I would release them. And then I would continue practicing, and over time, more students would be ready. And I'm going to pause here at this graphic because this was my favorite. I don't know about your classroom, but in my classroom, even as my grades were leveled, I still had such a wide range of abilities. So there would always be a handful of kids that just needed the 1 or 2 extra examples where every other kid was like, oh, Mrs. Martin, we get it. Here I am with the kiddos in the blue, able to give them exactly what they need. The majority of my class has already started the independent practice. And the high flyers that knew the new material, they showed me, hey, we got this. They have seamlessly moved into the mixed review where they're now reviewing everything I've ever taught, being handpicked and hand-selected and given the problems they need most. So I've got all these various ability levels, getting what they need, and there's only one of me, because Get More Math is helping to put my kids where they need. I loved it. Now, the goal is eventually those students would move into the practice set, and then over time, where do I want everyone to go? I want everyone to go to mixed review, because simply practicing today's material is not enough anymore. I really want you to retain the material, retain the gains we just made. I need you to move into the mixed review. And so that is sort of my little class pattern. Now, I think it's fair to say that some of you are saying, Erica, I don't even know what my class is going to look like. I get it. I absolutely understand that. I want to speak to what I did, what my experience was. The best part about Get More Math is it's super flexible. You can really use it however you see fit. But we know that whether our students are in the classroom or they're at home, are we still going to need to provide some sort of instruction? Absolutely. Are we still going to have to provide practice? You better believe it. Is it going to be even more important now than ever before that whatever gains our students make, we want to make sure that we hold on to those gains and retain them over time. And Get More Math can help you do that. So we sort of looked at the class as a whole. Let's take a closer look at one particular student. So we're going to fast forward, assume all that good stuff already happened. We're going to take Fernando here. We're going to pop him into his practice set. What does it look like for him as a student? So here, Fernando logged in to Get More Math. You can see the green ribbon across the top. I want you to take a look in the center. His practice set is entitled Slope. I, the teacher, made that decision. You can see it says 0 of 9. 9 is the practice set goal. I also made that decision. I decided that if my students could get 9 points on this new material slope, that's enough for me to say, Get More Math, move them into the mixed review. So it's sort of like that gateway. It moves from that focus practice into the mixed review. I made that decision. You notice the teacher in Get More Math is always in the driver's seat. Do you see the 3 red squares below the green ribbon? Those are 3 different skills that I, the teacher, chose. They are the skills I want my students to practice, all related to slope. Okay? So let's go ahead and have Fernando answer this question. He's probably going to get this one right. Smileys fall, he gets a point, moves right along. The blue outline shows me which skill I currently have selected. So I don't know if you noticed we were on the center square originally. We've now moved over to the right square. I can also tell you that many of my students would get this next problem wrong. They're finding slope, they're having to subtract negatives, and sometimes that's tricky. So let's see what happens if the student gets this incorrect. We're going to tell him, hey, your first try is incorrect. We're going to leave his problem there, but we're going to do nothing else. We are going to ask that Fernando actually go back, check his work, find the mistake, and fix it. Whoa, that's a pain for kids. How many of you have put your kids on some sort of math practice piece of technology and you just see them rush? Just give me the next question. Rush, rush, rush. Or maybe they have a worksheet. And what do those kids do? Next, 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 next. Well, with Get More Math, we're going to say you have to stop here. We're not going to give you a fresh problem until you fix this. So Fernando's going to check his work. More than likely, I'm going to help him. We're going to figure out that when he subtracted the negative, he forgot to change it to a positive. We're going to fix it up. He's going to get it right. Smileys are going to fall, and we're going to give him another problem to try. Now, why is this so important? I can tell you that when my kids would do this on a worksheet, they would make the mistake on the first one, move on to the second one, they'd make the mistake again. And we go to the third one, they'd make the mistake again. It was as if my practice was reinforcing errors more than it was reinforcing the mathematical skills that I wanted it to reinforce. So what I loved about Get More Math is we were identifying the mistakes and the errors early. So that now when Fernando gets this question, hopefully he's not going to make that mistake again. He's going to put the answer in, smileys fall again, and he earned a point. So let's pause here for a second. If you're paying attention, how many problems did Fernando do? Well, he's done 3. How many points has he received? He's only got 2 points. It will not take your students long to figure out that in Get More Math, we will give you a point if you answer a $ question correctly on the first try. It's a little bit of a higher standard, but guess what happens for your students? Now they know you've raised the bar. They know that rushing through the worksheet doesn't work anymore. They start to slow down. They start to check their work. They start to actually pay attention. They go back. I watched my son do this last spring. They have to go back to the video and check the teacher's explanation because they actually have to understand the math. I loved that as a teacher. I also love it as a parent. So Fernando now has a problem with the $ and he thinks, boy, I better be careful. I want to get this right on the first try. That's right, I think it's negative. He gets it right. He earns another point. So you kind of get the gist. This is the focus practice on slope, which is the material that I just taught. So if we were to fast forward, remember, here's Fernando. He's in that purple practice set. You can see some of his peers have joined him. What happens if we move forward? We're at 6 of 9. Let's get this one right on the first try. We've moved over. Let's get this one right. We're at 8 of 9. What is going to happen when we get to that 9? Oh boy, lots of colored squares. The center says mixed review. Where did Fernando just go? Seamlessly. I did nothing as the teacher. I could be helping another student. Fernando basically showed me that if he can get those slope questions correct on the first try 9 times, I don't need him to do 20 problems. I would much rather him be working in mixed review. So let's figure out what's going on this mixed review screen. You see lots of colors here. Some skills are still color-coded red. That is our lowest color rating. So that means very little to no mastery at all. You've either just started it or you're still really struggling. As you start to show short-term mastery, you're getting it right. But just in the short term, we're going to move it to yellow. As time goes on and you continue to get it right, we're going to turn it green. When more time passes and now we're starting to think, guess what? You're showing us long-term retention, not just short-term, but long-term, we're going to give you a silver star. And the very best rating is the gold star. That is where we feel confident that you have proven to us over and over that you know this skill and you truly have built long-term retention or long-term mastery. Okay? Now, there's something else going on with these squares. You'll notice that only some of them have $signs. Do you remember when I told you that Josh was building the mixed review? He wanted it to be both cumulative. Well, that's all the squares signifying all the skills. That's the cumulative piece. but he also wanted it to be individualized for every one of his kids. How did he do that? He did that through the dollar signs. So when you're looking at this student's screen, the only problems that Fernando can work on and earn a point are the ones with the dollar signs. His neighbor would have the same collection of skills, totally different color ratings, and totally different dollar signs because they are based on Fernando's data. So we're going to say, what skills do you still need to work on because you haven't shown any mastery on them yet? Those are your red ones. And guess what? We want you to practice some of these yellow ones because you're just building, but we need to see more. But do you notice the black square with the silver dollar sign? That's a silver star skill. He has shown us over time he knows how to do this. So why are we giving that back to him right now? Because that's what long-term retention is all about. If we never show it to him again, he'll forget it. So even the really good skills are going to come back from time to time. It's all about bringing back what they need when they need it. So I can tell you, if this were my student, he would absolutely move from the yellow skill that's selected right now, and he would pop right over to the black dollar sign. He would say, oh, that's the one I know I'm the best at. I'm going to grab that question. Great. You know our students love choice. Let's go ahead and answer that question. If we get it right on the first try, we went from 9 points to 10 points. And what's great is, look, Get More Math took the dollar sign away. We said, oh, fantastic. You showed us that you know how to do that skill, but we don't want you to keep practicing it. We want you to go practice the other stuff. So we take the dollar sign off. So now Fernando's probably going to answer this yellow one. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we answer this one. We get it right, we earn a point. But notice that Get More Math decided based on his data, we still want him to be able to do that problem, so we left the dollar sign on there. And Get More Math will make that decision every time your students answer a question. It's not based on one pretest. It's not based on one quiz. It's based on every piece of practice they've ever done. This right here is what made all the difference in my classroom. Okay? So we've talked about mixed review. We've talked about it as a whole class. We've looked at it from the student experience. Now let's talk about exams. Okay. Get More Math. Are we already able to truly build long-term retention by restructuring our day to provide both the focus practice and the mixed review? Absolutely. Old material matters, right? I'm going to ask you to consider something. If we're giving our students chapter tests or unit tests, could that be improved? Could we better align our assessments with the same message that we're giving our students with daily mixed review? Would cumulative tests do a better job at saying, guess what, that old material matters? Let's consider this. I want you to take a look at the whole year. You can see we have Get More Math days in there now. We're not just teaching and practicing, but we're teaching and practicing and reviewing. And so if we do that all year long, what does it look like if we only test on chapter 1 and we only test on chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 4? And so we're telling our kids, guess what? It's important that you continue to practice old material all the way throughout the year. But when I assess you, I'm only going to assess you on the most recent stuff I taught you. I don't know. Seems like it doesn't really align. Instead, what would happen if when you taught chapter 1, you tested on chapter 1, but when you taught chapter 2, you also reviewed chapter 1, and so when you tested on all of it. And then when you got to chapter 3, you were practicing everything, so why not test everything? And now I get it. You can't be giving the test just can't keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You're going to take a mix. You're going to take a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and you're going to pull it together. But doesn't that seem to make more sense? Doesn't that also seem to better prepare our students for the big test at the end of the year? Now, I know right now we're all thinking, is there even going to be a big test at the end of the year? I don't know. But I can also tell you that this year, maybe more than ever, as a teacher, I would want to know, right here, this is what, chapter 6. It would be important to me that if I just taught chapter 6, not only do I want to know if my kids learned the material in chapter 6, I also want to know, how is chapter 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 doing? I feel like teachers now need a clear picture of where our students are at before we can decide where we go forward. Well, I just think you're going to get a better picture with a cumulative exam than you might be with a unit exam. So the question becomes, if you did this and your kids do get to the end of the year and they do have to take the big test, is it really that big? Or is it just the last test of the year? Because really your tests have been growing incrementally all year long. Now, I think that makes a ton of sense to most math teachers. I think, again, the reason we don't do that already is because they're very hard to make. And we're not really preparing our students for a cumulative test all the time, so we don't give them. But guess what? With Get More Math, that's exactly what you're doing. Your kids are preparing for a cumulative test every time they're in the mixed review, and they're so simple to make. Not only are they simple to make, we're going to grade them for you. So we're going to save you tons of time because you're only going to look at the questions they got wrong, and we call it flexible grading because you get the chance to sort of change that. Do they get full credit, partial credit, no credit? I'll give you a sneak peek of that here in a bit. Once you grade the test, we have something called individualized corrections. We're going to take whatever questions your students missed that you decided, yep, they're wrong. We're going to send them back to the student, and we're going to say you need to correct your mistakes. Then you need to practice those skills. We're going to remediate them because then in a few days, you have the option to give your students what we call a follow-up exam. Now, these two are individualized for every single student. So each student has a handmade exam for them based on only the problems they missed on the original exam. So you actually have data to say, hey, guess what? That remediation we did back there with the corrections, did it work? Well, your kids have a chance to show you that. Then we've got some awesome analysis reports where we can really compare the exam scores to the follow-ups. We can also do an item analysis so we can figure out what skills are our students struggling with. That's the diagnostic part. Maybe you don't even want to go through the corrections in the beginning of the year. You simply want to give them a diagnostic on the previous grade's material, and you want to say, okay, what skills are we really lacking on? I just want to know it. Great, we're going to give that to you. We're going to give you the data, and we're going to make it super simple to push practice out to them on those skills. So let's take a look. It's funny, my training team knows that I push hard for cumulative exams, but guess what? This tool is your tool. You can make chapter tests, you can make unit tests, you can make little weekly quizzes, you can make large diagnostic tests. It's all the same. It's all in what you want to make it, okay? Let's talk about the flexible grading. Again, here's a quiz, test, 20 questions. Do I need to grade all 20? Nope. I only need to look at the 5 that Get More Math said were wrong. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice I have the opportunity to give them full credit, partial credit, or no credit. So I can override Get More Math's decision. Once I save that grade, those corrections will be pushed to the student's mixed review screen. So here's a student who's working in mixed review. After they take a test, if the teacher sends corrections to them, you'll notice that those 5 skills they missed will suddenly be at the top of their screen. Get More Math will ask that student to do 2 things before it allows the student to go back and work in that mixed review environment. The student will have to correct the mistake, so they'll actually see the test question that they got wrong and they'll see their wrong answer. So they need to correct it, and then they need to earn a point on the fresh new problem of the same skill. It's our way of saying, listen, we need to address the mistake, find the error, fix that misconception. Now we want you to practice it and show us that you know what you're doing now. So you sort of get this individualized remediation for each kid based on their exam. Now, I think in terms of a diagnostic or filling in gaps, what a great way at the beginning of the year or the beginning of a unit. What if you took a specific unit, you made this diagnostic, and each kid had 3, 4, 5 a week to really work through the skills they didn't know? It's a perfect way to individualize for your kids. Now, what's that follow-up look like? Student will simply go to their menu in the top right-hand corner. They'll have an option for exams and follow-ups. They'll choose their follow-up, and you'll notice that he doesn't have a test with 20 questions. He has a test with 5 questions. They're the 5 questions that he got wrong. So he has an opportunity to sort of show you, did the remediation that you just spent a few days on actually work? Now, if that's not enough, we're going to give you some analysis reports to compare that data. You can see here, I've got my students over on the left. I've got their exam scores in the middle, and the follow-up scores on the right. Now, it's more interesting if we look at just one student in particular. Here's the student we've been looking at. You can see he got that 15 out of 20 on the original exam. And how encouraging to me as a teacher when I provide remediation that I can actually have some data to know that it worked. Because a week later, when I gave him the quiz on those 5 skills, he got 3.5 out of 5 right. That was data. I loved the data. I felt like suddenly my assessment wasn't just a grade in the grade book. It was identifying gaps, remediating those gaps, and then showing me data to see whether or not it worked. I loved this. Now take a look at the top right of my screen there. Do you see the view analysis button? I also loved this one. This is going to show you an item analysis for the entire test given this entire class. So you'll see the list of the skills that you chose to put on the test, and if you put them on there multiple times, you'll see that too. Then we're going to show you how many students missed each skill, and then we're going to show you how many points were missed, depending on multiple iterations. I usually chose the points missed column. I would order so that I had greatest to least. And then I would go over to the left and I would select maybe the top 4, 5, 6 skills that seemed like they were missed by a majority of my class. Once I selected those 5 skills, the create practice set will actually become live. And I would go ahead and just seamlessly take that analysis. I was now one button given a focused practice session that I could use as a lesson. They could work through and practice. I could easily hit the print button and I now had a worksheet based on those 5 skills, all based off of the item analysis of my exam. I did it all the time. So I really, really, really love that the data we provide you, it's actionable. You can do something with it. Specifically now, when I think we're all really worried about what do our students, what are they coming to us with? We know it's not a question of will there be gaps? It's no, what are the gaps? I think we're all pretty certain they will be there. Okay, so I've wrapped up exams. Let me see how I'm doing with time. Okay, I'm doing great. We're going to wrap up here with the training and the free trial. So before you sign up, I want to make sure you know what we cover. Now this is interesting because our website right now does say that we cover grades 4 through geometry. But I will tell you, if you're a grade 3 teacher, I would encourage you to sign up anyway. We have all of the grade 3 skills actually loaded in our all skills bank. What we don't have quite ready are the nice, easy unit guide collections that we have for all of the other grades that we have listed here. They're not quite ready. They're going to be out within the next few weeks, hopefully by the end of August at the very latest. But the skills themselves are in there. So again, if you're a 3rd grade teacher, don't shut the door quite yet. Regardless, for the rest of you, you'll notice the big green button at the top that says free trial. If you want to go ahead and click that, you will see a form. We're going to ask you to fill out that information. The most important thing is that you give us your school email address. I know lots of people are sending us their Gmail, and unfortunately, we have to link you with your school, so make sure you do that, okay? I also want to point out that we do offer 4 levels of free training every day, 5 days a week, multiple times, okay? I don't want to brag on our training team, but I want to brag on our training team because I will tell you that we miss you. You know how you miss your students? We miss our teachers. And so we are dying to help you in any way we can. And so when you register for these trainings, you're actually going to get to meet with a live trainer, and they're going to give you all the help you need. I specifically want to point out level 3 is probably a little advanced for new users at this point, but level 1 is going to help you get set up. Level 2 is going to talk to you about some of the reports you might use in those early days. And then level 4 is on exams. And so if you are interested in maybe starting out with some sort of diagnostic, even though it says there we suggest 1 month of experience, I'm going to say forget that suggestion and go ahead and sign up. Because this year more than ever, we might need some pre-assessments for our students. The other thing that I wanted to tell everybody about is after this webinar, we are going to take everybody that attended, and we are going to send you a specific invitation to our training week that we're offering the first week of August. And so you'll notice the dates there. It's August 3rd through the 6th. We have some morning sessions and afternoon sessions. The beginner training, the advanced training, And the remote learning training, we're going to offer 2 times, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. We want to make sure that we fit everybody's schedule. And we also are offering an administrator training. So if you're a coach or you're a principal and you're sort of interested in exactly how you might coach your teachers through this, we're also offering that. That one's only going to be offered once though. All of these trainings will actually be held in Zoom instead of GoToWebinar, so there won't actually be a registration process. We will just provide the Zoom link for you. And once again, everybody's going to get an email with this particular flyer and all this information at some point after the webinar. I just wanted to make sure I was able to talk about it here. Okay, so I think we're done. That was quicker than normal. I hope I didn't talk too quickly. This is when I usually pause for questions. Hopefully Robbie has just been knocking out all the answers, but if not, Robbie, feel free to chime in and let me know if there's anything you'd like me to address.
Yeah, I think maybe just to start off very, very generally, could you just go over again the grade levels that we support as well as the devices that we support?
Yeah, let's go devices first. That one's easy. Anything with a browser. So a Chromebook, a laptop, a desktop computer, a cell phone. As long as the cell phone can pull up Chrome or Safari, you can access Get More Math. So that's the devices answer. In terms of the grades, I'm going to just simplify it and say we cover grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry. We actually have a fair amount of algebra 2. We don't like to say we're complete because we know we're not. But if you're an algebra 2 teacher, there's plenty of material for you to dig around into. That's it, Robbie. What else do you have for me?
Awesome. And then I think one that might answer a number of questions would be specifically about how Get More Math is individualizing. So if you could just expand on that a little bit and then maybe talk about if a teacher wanted to individualize further, kind of touch on some of those topics.
Awesome. So let's talk about how the program does it itself. So students are going to get today's lesson. That will become part of tomorrow's mixed review. Then you're going to teach something. They're going to get today's lesson. Now that's part of the next mixed review. So you can see how the mixed review just continues to build. And as the students are practicing, Get More Math is keeping track of every one of those skills in a very detailed manner. Did they get it right on the first try? Did they get it on the first try of the day? It's really looking at all sorts of data, and it's deciding based on essentially 2 factors. Do they need practice because they don't know how to do it yet? Or do they need practice because it's been too long since they've seen it? Does that make sense? So again, to try to simplify it further, you're not good at it yet, or you haven't seen it in a while. I'm afraid you're going to forget it. Now, I'm really sort of simplifying what is a very complicated algorithm to say that it crunches all those numbers on all the problems in terms of those 2 things, and it essentially ranks the skills and says, okay, these are the 5 or 6 we want you to do the most. Now, the cool part is once the students knock out those $5 or $6 signs, it's not as if they're done. Get More Math simply says, okay, now based on the data, what are the $5 or $6 signs you need to work on? And then they'll work on them, and then it'll say, okay, now based on the data. So really, the question sometimes becomes for teachers, well, how do they know when they're done? Well, you, the teacher, get to set a goal. You get to say, guess what? For today, I want you to get 20 points. You don't have to decide, I want one of those points on equations and I want one of those points. No. Get More Math does all that differentiating for you, for every kid. You just say, I want 20 points, and they're going to get that in the mixed review. Now, if you're a teacher and you want to, let's say, differentiate even further, I'm going to give an example in terms of differentiating up. If you have a class and 2 students in that class are gifted, well above grade level, they still have to take the grade level test, so they're going to be in that 8th grade class, but you know you want to give them some enrichment. You can create an additional class and call it enrichment. You can easily add those 2 students to that class, so those 2 students actually exist in 2 classes, and they can toggle between the classes all on their own. So they can go into the regular math class, do the regular work, and then you can say, once you reach the goal for today, you can simply go in, switch over to your enrichment class. I would like you to do 10 points a week in the enrichment class. Now, who decides what skills are in the enrichment class? That's you, the teacher. And so that's one example of how you might differentiate up. And you can imagine how you would do that with other students as well. Maybe you have two students that are just so far below grade level. Maybe you create a separate class, you move those two students into it, and maybe you actually pull them out of the regular class. You don't even want them doing grade level material. You can do that. Your students never know the difference. They're all logging in to get more math. So the students that are in the low level class, it's nice. They don't even see, there's no big spotlight on them that they're doing something different. They're all just logging in, and you can kind of pick and choose what material goes into each class. How's that, Robbie?
That was great. I think I'm trying to sort through these questions and see if there are any other connecting pieces that we can ask some larger questions. I'm seeing quite a few questions about standards. So state standards, Common Core, TEKS, etc. Could you just speak to that for a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So when Josh built the program initially, he was not looking specifically at any set of standards. So we have a massive skill bank, almost 3,000 different skills. And we did not build them with any one set of standards in mind. However, if you are a Common Core teacher, you will be able to look through our 3,000 skills and you'll find plenty of material that will meet your needs. Funny enough, if you're not a Common Core teacher, you will also look through the 3,000 skills that have all been sort of built per topic and find what you need. Now, in terms of state level collections, that's something that we're constantly working on. We have a whole team that really wants to simplify the process for you. 3,000 skills is a lot of skills. So we have people that are actually working to take those skills and put them into what we call collections so that it's easier for you to find. So many of you, I'll use Pennsylvania and Texas and California as an example, we do have state level collections where when you log in, you're going to see a folder with your state. And when you open that up, you're going to see standards there. And we're always releasing new states. So it's one of those things where you may see your state, you may not, but don't fret if you don't, because you never know, in a few weeks or a few months, your state might pop up. How's that?
Perfect. And then I think what might be the last question, or would answer quite a few, is just the some more details about the trial. So how long is the trial? What can you speak to in terms of pricing afterwards? And then with the unknowns of the coming school year, what can teachers expect when it comes to waiting to sign up and things like that?
Excellent. So the trial, again, for new users, if you've never utilized the trial before, you're going to start that trial and it is going to take you through the entire school year. So about July of next year is when that would end. It is unlimited. You can have as many teachers in your organization join. So we certainly encourage you to do that. There's a reason we give the trial for a year. And that's because teachers that truly utilize this over time, they're the ones that see it work. You know what I mean? If some people give a 30-day free trial, well, we don't want you to only use it for 30 days. We want you to see that in 90 days, your students are doing problems from 90 days ago and remembering it. So it's one of those things that we encourage teachers, listen, results speak. They speak to administrators that have to sign the checks. So if you can get as many teachers on board to utilize this while it is free so that you can say, look what our students did and look how this worked, it certainly helps when it comes time to make the purchase. In terms of pricing, I'm not a salesperson, but I can tell you that the price starts at $15 a student per year. And then obviously we offer various volume discounts on top of that. Robbie, you sort of talked about the remote nature of where we're all headed. And I just want everyone to, I want to speak to that in terms of training and in terms of like utilization. It's interesting because, you know, maybe we have kids in the classroom, maybe we have kids at home, maybe we have kids at home without internet. The beautiful piece of Get More Math is it works so well in the classroom. It's funny, Josh uses this little phrase where he says, I built the mixed review so that my students would fly through the material they know and they would crash into the material they don't know. And then he was there to help them. And really, you will have more conversations with your students. If you jump into our Facebook group and ask the Get More Math teachers in there, Do you talk more with your students about math? The answer is yes, because they suddenly see the mistake and they want to talk about it. So it is a phenomenal tool in the classroom. And I want to encourage you, as some of you may go back into the classroom. I have a feeling that some people might think, oh my goodness, I'm with my kids. I don't want to use any technology because I have them for this short amount of time. I want to make sure that I'm getting the best out of this time. Please know that you will be getting the best out of this time. You absolutely will. Plus, you'll be setting the framework, you'll be setting the routines so that if your students do end up having to go home, our teachers, our Get More Math teachers in the spring, when we all had that sudden shutdown, they were like easy peasy because that was the standard was already set. Their students already knew this was how we did our math practice. Now, did they have to be creative with how to send their lessons? Absolutely. Did they have to get creative with how they communicated with their kids when they needed that help? Absolutely. But we're working on a lot of really cool things. Here's what's cool. We hear you. We know what teachers are asking for. So there are going to be some releases come this fall that are going to make that remote environment much, much easier. But in the meantime, you've got your students in class. Please use this. Try it. Get comfortable with it now and early. You have students at home, perfect way. And if you sign up for that first training, you're going to see this current status dashboard that we have. I think we do this better than anybody, where you might have some kids at home, you might have some kids in the guidance office working, you might have some kids in your classroom, and you've got one screen showing you exactly what everybody's doing, which is what teachers are like, whoa, what's going on right now? We're going to help you with that. And then on the flip side, those kiddos that don't have the devices or don't have the internet, everything in Get More Math can be printable. So it's nice that you don't have to have a completely separate resource to get printed materials differently from your online materials. So just kind of wanted to speak to that. And one more pitch, that during that first week of August, remember, one of our training sessions is meant specifically for this remote learning environment that we're all understandably concerned about. And I'll tell you that as we built that training, what we did is we went directly to our teachers, the ones that are already using this in a remote environment successfully, really successfully. And we said, what are you doing? Tell us. So I'm really excited about that training. I would encourage all of you to sign up for that so we can speak more to that. I know it's a concern that we all have. So if we can do anything to sort of ease that anxiety, that's what we want to do.
All right, and then I really do think the last one, if you could just speak to whether or not this webinar is being recorded, and then also one last time, if you could remind folks where to find that free trial link. I'm seeing a number of questions about where to find that, how to share it with colleagues, things like that.
Got it. So two things, you will get a recording of this. So as soon as you get it, you can fast forward to the part where I told you about the free trial in case you forget. But the simplest place to go is getmoremath.com. And on getmoremath.com, you're going to see a green button that says free trial on any page on the whole website. You can't miss it. So just head to our website. You'll see the free trial. Make sure you give us your school email, and we'll get those credentials to you. And then we hope to see you at a training soon. All right, Robbie, anything else?
I think that'll just about do it. Yeah,
that's it.
I'll take a few more minutes to answer some specific questions here, but that should be good.
Okay. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave the webinar running so that Robbie can type out some last minute answers. I'm just going to leave my screen up there. You can see our support email, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks so much for joining us.